Welcome to the Hey Rhona podcast. Let's talk life and leadership. Each week, Rhona talks with high-capacity leaders about how their hardest seasons shape the way they lead and love today. We often keep struggles in the shadows while we lead, but those stories, they shape us. Our goal is to look back and see how we were shaped in the struggle. It's time to ask, what actually grew when life felt dark? Welcome to the conversation.
Hey, it's Rhona. Today I'm going to be talking with my friend Audra. We've been friends since high school, and recently we were having a conversation about a framework that I use when I'm working with clients. Not completely sure what it is at the root driving her life, so we decided to record it and share it with you. I hope you enjoy. Welcome to the conversation.
I will only go viral if I turn into some kind of sobbing mess, and then people clip it to make fun of me. I struggle with boundaries. I think that's something that we talked about back in I was like, oh, boundaries are a thing. Maybe I should learn about them. And I've been learning about them ever since. There is that longing where if I do this enough, then I will finally feel heard and seen. That's when I was on the treadmill in Planet Fitness and absolutely lost it and was like, oh, I can't do this in public. I'm going to need to finish this in my car.
We're going to actually dive into something called the Primal Question. And it's a framework that I use when I'm coaching. And this is the first time to really take a deep dive in that on the podcast. Awesome. Hey, Audra, how are you?
I am so great. It is fall in the Ozarks finally. And I'm loving it.
That is awesome. I'm really excited to have her today as a guest on the show. And I'm going to pitch it to her so she can give us a little bit of a bio.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I'm surprised you didn't say start in high school because that's where our friendship started.
Sure.
We were close in age and our brothers were close in age. So we were a built-in friendship there.
Yeah.
But yeah, so after high school, I went to University of Central Arkansas and really wanted to be a sports chiropractor. I had been involved in athletics. My brother and sisters have also been involved in athletics most of our childhood. And so I wanted to go into chiropractic care, focusing on prevention of sports injuries. And that's what I wanted to do from the time I was 16 until March before I graduated college. And so I had this kind of pre-midlife crisis when I was 22 and was like, I don't think I want to do this anymore, but this is the only thing that I had planned for. Yeah. So after college, I joined AmeriCorps Vista. Vista is just one of many AmeriCorps programs that they have. And that was kind of my introduction into public health and definitely had not considered for myself. And so that was kind of what set me on the trajectory of thinking about community health, how education and public health are a really interesting and complicated and exciting intersection. And so that's basically what I've done since I was 22, which I feel like I'm far too young to say that I've been in the field for 15 years because I thought I had a vision. And the thing is the preparation towards what I thought I had planned prepared me for the alternate path, which is funny how things work out. It ended up not working out as I thought. So yeah, I've been in public health and school health specifically, and I really enjoy it. And I feel like some of those 7 years were COVID years, which are like dog years. So
just on a daily basis, what does your day look like when it comes to work? I know you work remotely mostly.
I do.
Always. Okay. And so then what does that look like? Are you working just with your team remotely, or are you working directly with schools or more with students or programming? What exactly are you focused on?
Yeah, so I work for a health and PE organization, and I'm a project manager and grant writer. So I support kind of more the health education side of things in schools, but I primarily work with our team and our stakeholders, and then directly with health and physical education teachers in schools. And that's so awesome. It's fun. I obviously am biased and think that school-based health education is really important. And so, yeah, I really enjoy what I do.
That's awesome. Sometimes we get so stuck. Your story is a good example for us of how if we're willing to take that risk and kind of navigate a different direction, it may all come together without us realizing it.
You see it more as just preparation for whatever path, and don't try to necessarily fixate on the end goal. I'm learning that there's a lot of growth that just happens in the preparation and being open to opportunity and kind of just leaning into that. And I say that not quite having figured that out yet, but I'm like learning.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's cool. And I think that it's scary in the process, especially when we feel like we need stability. But at the same time, then you can look back and see how it was like working out for something good along the way, even though it feels really overwhelming and scary in the process.
Really.
A lot of times we can get caught up in like our branches. And if we think of it as a tree, like that's what we see and that's what we tend to try to manage and prune and help produce good fruit and all of this. But a lot of times there's something underneath the soil that's really driving that growth and has a lot to do with how those emotions, the thoughts and the behaviors are coming out to play in our lives. And so if we can peel back those layers and get underneath the surface, we can get more clarity and understanding as to what's driving those behaviors, thoughts, and emotions instead of just trying to correct them or manage them. Me and Audra have already talked about this some, but I know that there's been kind of some back and forth at times between two questions. And I don't know if you want to just kind of share those with us.
Yeah. So I have placed myself, or quizzes have placed me with two different questions, and that's the PQ3, the Primal Question 3, am I loved? And Primal Question 7, do I have a purpose? And so those were kind of the two questions that identify with a lot of the things in there. It was pretty clear by the fact that I started crying in a Planet Fitness that I was Primal Question 3, am I loved? Yeah. And I feel like that's usually the indicator for me when I feel seen. Yeah. Is that I cry and I'm like, oh, this must be me.
We're going to all have all of those needs in different levels of our lives and within different relationships. But as you watch those patterns in your life and you start to see which one brings that biggest bulk of emotion or change in your thoughts where it's just kind of racing, then you're going to realize that that's having the strongest response. So sometimes I feel like even if you're like, am I loved or am I safe? You can start trying to find safety by feeling wanted, or you can start trying to find safety by feeling loved, or you can on like, oh, I'm just trying to have purpose, but miss the fact that maybe there's some purpose connected there in like the love or the wanted or something else underneath it.
And it's not like a label or an excuse or a justification for my behavior.
Yeah.
So I love that you mentioned like that there's intersections.
If you look at this, it's really just like the highest needs that we all have as humans. But then when you keep digging deeper, it's still connected to that real root there. And I know too, I told you the other day when you told me like, I'm definitely am I loved. I was like, yeah, I know. So what I'd like us to do is let's just talk about maybe what you do when you're not getting a yes to your question. What are some things that you can notice that across your life, maybe you engage in when it comes to behaviors or something that you do to try to change that to a yes?
There's like a different flavor, but I show up in the same way, both professionally, with my family, with my friends, in romantic relationships.
Let's look for three. Like, let's look at like three different ways to explain. Yeah.
But it's the same. It's the same thing essentially, where I just like lean in so hard to becoming a people pleaser that I completely abandon myself. And then I feel emotionally exhausted and eventually resentful. And a little bit bitter.
And what are some things that you noticed cause you to lean into that? Like
less, I wouldn't say necessarily performance-based, but almost more transactional. And so I think it's very much so. As a PQ3, like I'm very empathetic and I want to anticipate people's physical and emotional needs. And I think that there are healthy ways that gift shows up, but there are also unhealthy ways that gift shows up, and that can be hypervigilance and taking like responsibility for other people's bad day or like sadness or anger, even if it has nothing to do with me, and feeling like I'm somehow responsible and I need to micromanage that. Like there's a difference between like being aware and empathetic and just being like hypervigilant and
trying to fix it all.
And so I can definitely lean into that. And I am a very giving and loving person. I love loving people. I feel very strongly about like intentionally investing in relationships. And so with mindset that I'm going to give my time and energy and resources into building this relationship.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's either taken for granted, or sometimes that's very, very transactional, to where that relationship becomes like what I make this person feel or what I do for this person.
Yeah.
And so when I say like performance based, it's not like performing at a certain level necessarily, but like what am I contributing to their life? And it's not like a mutual thing. And I struggle with boundaries. I think that's something that we talked about back in like 2019 when I read that book at your house in Miami.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, boundaries are a thing. Maybe I should learn about them. And I've been learning about them ever since. And it can still be really difficult for me to have boundaries. And because that's a challenge, I a lot of times give until I'm depleted and unhealthy. And not just because like, oh, I have a servant's heart, but also because there is that like longing where if I do this enough, then I will finally feel like heard and seen. And that was the part, like, I wouldn't necessarily say I resonated with the sentence, am I loved? About like love feeling like seen and heard and understood. That's when I was like on the treadmill in Planet Fitness and absolutely lost it and was like, oh, I can't do this in public. I'm going to need to finish this in my car. Because like that to me, right? If someone were to ask me like, are you loved? I'd be like, yes, a lot of people love me. But I said, do you feel understood? That question's a lot harder to answer.
Yeah. I was wondering too, like something you said really stood out right now is when you said that you don't feel like it's always coming from a place of like serving people. It's more transactional. So something I just heard recently was that a lot of times people pleasing is just trying to pursue internal peace. So we're trying to keep everything calm so we feel safe inside. If you keep everything at peace, then you feel like, okay, now I'm loved because there's not conflict. And sometimes we can get really caught up on connecting conflict with like not feeling loved or approved of or understood. It is just a coping mechanism to try to create that yes. And so it works perfect in your scramble. And I love to, like, you were able to identify, you know, all of those effects, the negative ones of like feeling exhausted and resentful and bitter, and how that all streams from that. And that comes from that overgiving. And that's where shifting that idea into like service, when you said that, that turns it into the gift. So if you're living in your scramble, then you're trying to get people to answer your yes and to feel like you have the yes. But if instead you flip it and you're using it as acts of service, then it's a gift that you're giving freely. So like there can be some like relationship there as to how that's playing out. But what does that look like for you when you are maybe in a relationship and you're not sure if you're going to get a yes? And so you just completely, what do you do?
Yeah, funny you mentioned that.
You run away.
That's something I'm exploring in therapy right now. Yeah, so I don't want to do like too much of like a random sidebar, but
we can
I've been learning about attachment styles lately, and I've realized that I am something called fearful avoidant, which is really a confusing place to live, where it's like there's a craving for emotional intimacy, but a fear of being vulnerable and being hurt. So there's that constant push-pull of like, I definitely have some avoidant tendencies. And so it's like, I get into like self-protectant mode, go into my like little turtle shell. It's fine. I can do it myself. And I think, I'm a very independent. I'm single. I have a really fulfilling and wonderful life. But I think I'm kind of at a period now where I'm reflecting on like, okay, some of that was also done to protect myself. And now I'm like, oh, there's like a thread of some fear-based decision making that I also, to kind of get back to your question in kind of a convoluted way, like I also like intellectualizing is also a way that I avoid. So sometimes I'm going to research and study this until I understand it and I understand this person and I understand myself. And then I'm going to approach it in kind of almost a mathematical way, very analytical. And I'm realizing now, like relatively recently, like, oh, that is a way of suppressing my emotions and trying to keep myself from feeling big feelings that are scary, from being truly vulnerable. And so that's just like another way that I can kind of practice avoidance is by trying to like dive into like research and understanding and intellectualization, which again are not bad things, but they can become, I think for me, that's an easy crutch.
Yeah, because you're disconnecting in a sense from leaning into it and finding the connection. You're like creating a wall kind of.
Right.
I think
approaching it like a scientist.
Yeah. Because it's very safe in protecting yourself and like not
because you're detached from the outcome. Like in science, you research and you study, but you should be detached from the outcome. And so again, that can be a gift, but that can also be a thing that keeps you stuck.
Interesting. When we look at avoidance, a lot of times, like you can ask yourself, like, what am I getting out of it? So at the end of the day, what you're getting out of it is that you're not, like you said, you're not having to be vulnerable. You're not having to engage and take the risk of possibly feeling loved or feeling heard or feeling known. Instead, you can come with all of your research and present your case, your point of view or something like that, versus it just being your point of view.
And I think it's also a control thing. Like if I understand this emotion, then I can control it in some way. And no. And so this is a good realization to have come to, no matter how painful it was to get here.
Why do you think that you feel that way? Like, why do you feel like it's important to suppress the emotions, or do you struggle with accepting the emotions? Like, is there...
Yeah, there is. And this might be the part of the podcast where I cry. I'm going to try not to, but I think because growing up and even into adulthood, there were good emotions and bad emotions. And so good emotions are great, but bad emotions, you nip it in the bud. And oh no, it's happening. And so I think, part of what I'm realizing is that, emotions are just data. It doesn't mean that how I feel is necessarily a fact, but it's data that tells my body something about what I'm experiencing or how I'm processing something or how I'm not protecting a boundary or, it's information. I think approaching it in that way has been really illuminating. And so like these big feelings that aren't good emotions, that's definitely where I feel like I try to, like rationalize, understand, put it in a box, lock up the box. If I want it to go away bad enough, eventually it'll go away. And obviously that's not what happens. What happens is it's never dealt with. So it gets like this power and it grows and it becomes more toxic and it seeps into other things. And for me, sometimes that can be explosive. And I
think that's for everybody.
We can say that's
just you. I think that's all of us. Yeah, because it's like building up this wall of toxic things, and then it does.
Right.
It erupts.
And because I'm a people pleaser, like I don't want anyone to know that this toxic thing is building, this toxic bad feeling that I'm supposed to have just crushed through sheer will and understanding. It's growing. It's making me feel worse. So I'm either needier or more avoidant, depending on what I'm not feeling from this relationship, whether that's from my parents or my siblings or friends or whatever. One of the things that I'm hopeful for to figure out in the last few years of my 30s is to figure out like the early warning signs. I always see things in hindsight of seeing like, there were like indicators along the way that I was not healthy. I was not okay. I was not engaging in this relationship in a way that honored myself or the person that I'm in, the person relationship. But it doesn't necessarily change my behaviors. Because I still
people pleasing in itself can become manipulative because you're trying to manipulate the outcome you want it to be. And we don't normally think of it that way because we're trying to be really nice. But at the end of the day, like we're manipulating the overall experience by keeping any conflict at bay. But then at the same time, it's dishonest too, because then we're not being honest with the way we feel. And so I think that in itself is something that I found really helpful, is for me to notice when I'm trying to avoid the conflict, or I'm not being true to how I actually feel, or voicing my needs. Because at the end of the day, when we start identifying what our needs are and what we need in that moment, it may bring conflict. But if it's a healthy relationship, the other person is going to hear the needs and we're going to be able to meet in the middle, and if not, then that's when we're going to have to be more cautious, but I think the hardest thing, especially when we're people pleasers and we're afraid of our emotions, is to be able to identify when it's happening and then think, okay, well, what is it that I need right now? Like, why is it that I'm afraid of creating conflict, or whatever it is that you're afraid of creating in that moment? And so you're leaning into people pleasing in order to keep some peace. But instead, ask yourself, what do I need right now? And then come up with a way to voice that. I think that in itself, and then knowing that you're not responsible for the response.
Yes.
Yeah.
That is huge. I think that's also a challenging part of boundaries, of like really understanding your boundaries and knowing that, like, at the end of the day, no one else is responsible for respecting your boundaries.
Yeah.
You are responsible for making sure that you're honoring that. And then other people's responses are out of your control.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's the scary part of boundaries. And sometimes relationships are stronger because of, not necessarily like conflict is great, but conflict doesn't come out of nowhere. There's something rooted in there. And I think you can approach it through like repair and it can build something stronger, but it can also be like a death blow to relationships. You can also realize through setting your boundaries, and if those boundaries aren't honored and maybe there's not repair after conflict, that like that relationship was kept on life support by you.
Yeah.
And maybe that's not what needs to happen. And
I think something that's really interesting and what's coming to mind right now is, I feel like when you're talking about like suppressing emotions and like putting them in your little boxes, and I just had this visual of like kind of stacking them and creating a wall, but I think that's a negative way of creating a boundary. Like sometimes that's what we're doing to cope and protect ourselves. And so we keep like creating this wall by boxing everything up and putting it there to protect us. And so we're doing that with people pleasing or whatever that looks like for each person. But then at the end of the day, we don't actually have a good boundary. And so that's why the person keeps coming and coming, and then it explodes. Whereas if we put a really good boundary in place, like, no, these are my needs, and we start creating a wall of a boundary of like what we need emotionally and mentally to function and get our questions answered with a yes, then we create a healthy boundary. And ultimately the goal isn't for everybody else to like give us our yeses. It's for us to give ourselves. So in a way, like when you start creating that boundary, then you're reminding yourself like, I'm loved, and because I'm worthy of love and deserve love, then these are the things that I need in a relationship or don't need in a relationship. And so that's where I'm going to like draw that line and start to identify the things that I need in order to keep myself in an environment where I feel loved and where I feel like I'm seen. And, like those needs are realistic needs. And I think sometimes we can start to feel like the things that we need are unrealistic for others, but they're not. They're normal things that are needed for relationships to thrive and be healthy.
Right. And I think sometimes there are things that we need, and then there are some things that we just like, we don't need.
Yeah.
And I think for me, thinking of, maybe a boundary is not something that I need from you, but just behaviors that I'm no longer willing to engage with or expose myself to.
Yeah.
You can still engage in those behaviors. Has nothing to do with me, but I'm removing myself from this situation to be in this environment where I'm by my lack of boundaries, I'm showing you the behaviors I'm willing to tolerate.
Big mental exercise to not take it personal, especially when it's somebody or in a relationship where we're really hoping to get some of our needs met. Something that's really helpful is to, when I'm in those moments, then to start identifying like other areas where I am getting that met. So if I'm not being heard and seen in a relationship that really matters, well, where are some other areas where I feel like I'm getting that yes? And then trying to shift focus onto that more. The way the one person is treating you isn't defining who you are. That's just a reflection of who they are. And so then ultimately, when you look at the other relationships that are healthier, then you're able to say, oh, wait, like it's not me. It's really, it's like, I am being heard. I am being seen. I feel fulfilled when I'm acting in my gifts and who I am as a person. And I can see the ripple effects of those. And that's been a really great exercise for me to just kind of identify when I feel like I'm really living in who I am and those gifts without it being like validation from other people.
One of the things you mentioned earlier is about like so much of that coming from ourself and not like looking to someone else to fill that. And that has been another thing that I have realized relatively recently, like in the last few months, of how much, or maybe not how much, but just starting to see that there is nuance between what is my responsibility to self-regulate and then what is our responsibility in whatever this relationship is to co-regulate, and recognizing that there is a lot of nuance there of figuring out like what is my responsibility and then what is our responsibility within whatever this relationship is.
So let's take a dive into that. What is, when you're living in your gifts, what does that look like for you in your relationships?
Yeah, so I think it's I feel very deeply, and so if someone is, it doesn't take a lot for me to put myself in someone else's shoes. And so I think that like perspective taking is really easy. And because of that, I can sit with people and whatever they're feeling. And I just have a genuine curiosity to understand people. And you know, we could probably like psychoanalyze that of like, the thing that I want most from people is the thing that I can provide to other people so easily, like making them feel seen and important and known. And so I think that that's something that I can be overwhelmed by a little bit, because I can just feel other people's emotions so deeply as well. I think that it helps people not feel alone. And I think that that's one of the reasons, like my friendships are not always, you know, beautiful and perky and let's just, you know, small talk and have brunch. Like most of my friendships are like really like deep. Let's talk about trauma. Let's talk about, you know, it's so there's really nothing I feel like that anyone can say to me that will like surprise or shock me. Sometimes people experience hardships because of things that have happened to them. And some people like me experience hardships because of consequences of their own actions. Very non-judgmentally, and have empathy for whatever people are going through for whatever reason, whether it's, you know, because of a consequence of their own action, which is how I learn lessons, or because, you know, something has happened to them.
Anything because you're like, oh, I've been there. And then you have, because some people would be like, oh yeah, I've been there. Now get it together. You're going to get through it.
This is what I did.
This is how you're going to be successful in spite of it. But instead for you, like your primary motive is really to just sit there and be there with them in it. Your core need, but then you have a satellite also. And so on either side of am I loved, you have am I secure and am I wanted. Do you feel like either of those really stands out to you as your satellite?
I think my instinct was the wanted wing.
Hey, thanks for listening in today. The conversation's not over. Keep listening for part 2 as Audra and I continue to dig into her primal question, identifying what's really at her core.
Do you ever feel like personal development isn't getting to the root? Primal Question Coaching takes a different approach. Take Rhona's free Primal Question assessment at heyrhona.com and join our free monthly call, both linked in the show notes. If you're struggling, reach out to a friend, find a therapist, or connect with Rhona at hey.rhona. If you have enjoyed listening, share it and leave a 5-star review. Rhona reads everyone. Until next time, cheers to hope and healing.